Thank you for being here. Normally, when we file a lawsuit, we don't hold a press conference on it. You know, I've found the best thing to do is announce it once we got a check back from it. But this is one of those situations where we felt like we needed to let those victims of student loan predatory practices know that we're looking into this and try to ask them to come forward. If they've been a victim of a company named Navient, it was a student loan organization that we filed a suit against last week for violations of our Consumer Protection Act. Prior to 2009, they were originating the loans, and so they were making money off of loaning money that was federally backed. Their system changed in 2010 when the Obama administration sort of took out the middle person, and the federal government was the originator. But these companies were making money off of fees and servicing those loans. So there's two different reasons as to why we think that they were seeking the profit motive. But just let me give you this one quote from the former CEO of Navient, and it kind of puts in perspective, I think, the reason we filed this litigation. The former CEO of Navient said, if the borrower can create condensation on a mirror, then they need a loan this year. In other words, if you could breathe, it was going to help them make money by loaning money to students that they know that they knew that they were not likely to ever be able to pay them back. So this is sort of like the mortgage fraud crisis that we went through that caused the Great Recession, where these companies were making loans knowing that people couldn't pay them back. What's worse and what's most heinous about this activity of this company is that they take advantage of young people at a time when they're desperate. I remember when I had to borrow money to go to law school. I didn't care where the money came from, what the interest was. I just knew that I had to pay to get through school, and I'd worry about it when I got out. And a lot of these people are in that position, but they took advantage of them, knowing full well that about 50% of them weren't going to be able to ever pay this money back. Another heinous aspect to this activity is the fact that during the Bush administration, the most recent one, they disallowed the bankruptcy courts to discharge this kind of debt. And so if you can't discharge it, you basically carry it for life and you become an indentured servant. That something we did away with, I thought, years ago. But they took advantage by during the time period of when they were originating loans. In other words, they had the money out there on the line of making interest, and what they would do, they would like when I worked at the Supreme Court for a year, I didn't have the money to pay. I think Supreme Court law clerkship was $28,000 a year. I couldn't pay my student loans. So I got a forbearance for a year until I could get another job where I made enough to pay the student loans. So the interest is compounded during that year. What Navient was doing, they would steer people toward forbearance, which allowed that interest to compound instead of what was better for the student. And what was better for the student was to allow them to pay on a sliding scale based upon their income. The problem with what they were doing in their call room, in their servicing of these loans, was they had the quicker you could get somebody off the phone, the better. The less time you spent servicing that loan on the phone, you could be dealing with somebody else. So they they'd just say, okay, well, you can just do this over the phone. We'll just let you go for a year or two or whatever you need till you can catch up and make these payments. They wanted to get them off the phone, and that instead of counseling them and steering them toward filling out all the forms that are required for income-based payments. So that was their MO of trying to get students off the phone so that they didn't have to spend time. That's where they made the money servicing those. And so 4 other states have filed lawsuits. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau filed a suit. All those actions are still ongoing. And we want to, our remedy that we're seeking is injunctive relief to make them stop that kind of predatory activity, and as well as penalize them for violations of our Consumer Protection Act. This isn't an effort to collect money for the students. You know, they have their own personal causes of action, I suppose. This is to stop that type of predatory practice going on in our state, which is prohibited by our Consumer Protection Act. So that's where I started out, was that we're trying to find more evidence of how many victims are out there. And so we have joined in this lawsuit with the Mississippi Center for Justice to try. They've had many calls from students who are concerned about this issue, and they have information, and that's why we're here today, to try to announce this litigation and try to get more students to come forward who may have been a victim of these practices by Navient. At this time, I'll turn it over to the Mississippi Center for Justice. I'm glad for y'all to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
We appreciate you for having us. Good afternoon. My name is Charles Lee, and I'm the Consumer Protection Director for the Mississippi Center for Justice. The Center for Justice is a nonprofit public interest law firm, and since its beginning, the mission of the center has been to advance issues of racial, social, and economic justice in Mississippi. Our participation in this litigation is in keeping with the mission. The Mississippi Center for Justice fully supports Attorney General Hood for taking the steps necessary to protect Mississippi student loan borrowers who have been harmed by the defendants and their practices. These harmful practices have created obstacles to repayment by providing borrowers with bad information or no information regarding repayment options, incorrectly processing payments, and failing to act on the complaints of borrowers. Justice General Hood and his office have a significant interest in protecting Mississippi student loan borrowers from being exploited. The Mississippi Center for Justice has a shared interest and a demonstrated track record, which is evidenced by the center's past successful litigation against for-profit colleges, holding them accountable for misleading students and providing false information to students. The student loan default rate for Mississippi student loan borrowers is the 4th highest in the nation. The default rate, that is. Mississippi student loan borrowers have an average student loan debt of $26,000, and 60% of Mississippi student loan borrowers are in debt due to student loans. This debt is crippling to those who are trying to be financially independent, and the servicer's behavior, which increased the borrower's difficulty in making repayment of their loans, is unconscionable. In this case, the Mississippi Center for Justice is working in tandem with the Attorney General's litigation team to identify Mississippi student loan borrowers who have been negatively impacted by the defendant's practices in the origination and servicing of student loans. During the process of identifying Mississippi borrowers impacted, we found many. I would like to briefly share with you one of the borrower's stories. Her name is Ashlyn Booker. Ms. Booker is a native Jacksonian who received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Tougaloo College and a master's degree from Belhaven University. She had a direct student loan to assist with financing her educational pursuits. She began repaying this loan immediately after graduation and has faithfully done so to this day. Despite making consecutive payments of $300 per month for roughly 13 years, or about $46,000, her balance has only been decreased by $6,000. In the servicing of her loan, she was never informed of options such as the income-driven repayment plan that would have decreased the length and the amount for the repayment of her loan. In the origination of her loan, important information that would impact the decision-making process in obtaining a student loan was never shared with her. Also, important information that would have allowed the release of the co-signer of her loan, her mother, was not provided to her. Ashlyn Booker is only one example of the defendant's egregious behavior, but in my opinion, it is one too many. To the identified and the unidentified victims of the alleged abuses by the defendants, please know that Attorney General Hood is working to right the wrongs of the defendants. This litigation will ensure that Mississippi student loan borrowers like Ashlyn Booker are given every opportunity to succeed in repaying their student loans. The student loan system is very complicated and extremely difficult to navigate. Furthermore, it is incredibly challenging for student loan borrowers to properly enforce their rights when they have been wronged. Ms. Booker told me at the conclusion of our first conversation that she was excited and equally relieved that finally someone would serve as an ally and stand with her in this fight. To Ms. Booker and all Mississippi student loan borrowers impacted by this student loan debacle, please know that as a part of this litigation team, the Mississippi Center for Justice will hold those in charge of servicing student loans of Mississippi borrowers to the highest standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Well said. Like you've done this before. If y'all have any questions, you know, with them knowing that 50% of these loans would fail, they went into this knowingly, and they did it for the profit motive, to the misery of those students. I tell you what, really disgusts me, a reason we're having so many of our kids are leaving our state is because they got $70,000 for an undergrad degree of student loans. And we've lost more kids to the brain drain than any state in the past 6 years. Because these students, you can't come back to a small town like where I'm from unless your parents own a business or you got a professional degree. Many of these small towns, I mean, you go to church, you see all the kids that have left our rural towns and areas. It's really had an effect, and it originates right across over there at the Capitol. Back when I first got elected, the mantra was we're not going to raise anybody's taxes, and the revenue sources from the legislature were cut off to our universities. And so they had to raise tuition. Tuition at our major universities in Mississippi, when I took office, was $4,000. Now it's over $8,000. It's doubled in those 14 years. And you know, it's actually $8,300, and it's going up this semester. What they did at the legislature without fully funding university educations is they priced a college education out of the reach of a working person like me. I got 2 in college. I can't write an $8,000 check for each child each semester. There was no other choice than parents and their students to go borrow this kind of money. And when I say $8,000, I mean that's for tuition, that's room, board. We checked this. Tuition, room and board, and meal ticket. That's what it's done. So we've doubled the price. We've put students in a position where they have to borrow money to get an undergraduate degree. And unfortunately, if they're going to find a job that they can pay back $70,000, buy a house, maybe pay insurance on a car, those kind of things, they just simply can't go back to these small towns, and that hurts parents like me. You know, that you want your kids to be able to grow up near you and see your grandkids grow up. I think that's contributed to a lot of the problems in our state, and these lenders saw that as an opportunity to make a lot of money, and they were scattering loans out there that anybody could draw a breath. If y'all got any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
You mentioned a minute ago this litigation is not trying to recoup money for the victims. What is being done for them? Do you know? Or?
Well, I'm sure there were class actions that were filed,
right.
if I'm correct about that. So they will have an avenue to try to recoup their losses. They owe the money for life. Ours is just try to stop the activity for injunctive relief, in other words, and to penalize them on the Consumer Protection Act's penalties, $10,000 per occurrence that occurred on, and to disgorge them of their profits. Now that's where the money will come from for the
Is
state.
that a state penalty?
Yes, that's the state Consumer Protection Act penalty, $10,000 per event. And that's not just per loan. It could be that they, put people off 2 or 3 times on the phone at that activity by saying, "Oh, well, don't you worry, we won't have to pay a dime this year," which sounds good to a poor student. But if they explain to them, that you could go through this paperwork and get a sliding scale where you pay a certain percentage of your income toward that, but they didn't do that, and so they took advantage of
Avient
it.
still selling loans?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah.
They're servicing.
Yeah, they're still servicing in Mississippi, definitely. Yeah, they're one of the top servicers in the country of student loans.
They got preferred status at universities by having these subprime loans out there, so that the more that they had, the more preferential treatment, I suppose, being in preferred status lender. They got more loans, so it was sort of they made money as a whole. But as I said, they're originating them prior to, from about 2000 to 2009, they were originators of the loans. So they had they made money off the interest. But then when the federal government began to originate the loans, they serviced it. They handled the paperwork, and so their profit motive then was driven by getting people off the phone. The less time they had to spend on service, the more money that they made. And so they were also having calls from students on loans they originated prior to 2009 or 2010. It ended in 2009. So they were making money on interest from those people who called, and they may have called in 2015. I know that's probably a little complicated.
If I can just add one thing in your response to your question. I'm Beth Orlansky, the Advocacy Director at the Mississippi Center for Justice. If through this lawsuit we are able to get Navient to change their practices and the way they're servicing, that will certainly help people who have student loans now. They'll get the options that they're supposed to have. They won't get refunded money that they paid in the past, but they will have better terms going forward.
Was there a class action filed? I mean, most of the time, that's how we find out about these cases.
There are some class actions, but they're more they're more in line with the servicing of the loan and the calls that they're making to individuals to collect the payments. So that's what the majority of the class action lawsuits are about. And I was actually in a continuing legal education course yesterday with an attorney in Mississippi who's actually involved in some of those lawsuits, and they're really pursuing those under the Federal Debt Collection Practices Act, just to prevent them from calling them so often. And once you tell them to stop calling, they're supposed to stop, but they haven't done that, and that's mainly Navient. Yeah, so they are really heavily involved in that.
How many other states are involved? Is Mississippi only one of the states involved in these?
There are 4 states involved, I believe Washington State, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and I think it's 3, and 4 in addition to Mississippi now, so.
But this was like an endless pool of people constantly and taking advantage of it.
Oh, of course, yeah. People want to go to school, they need to pay for the education, and the only way to do that typically is to have a student loan. And they take advantage of people because initially when you're getting a student loan, you aren't thinking about the repayment that you have at the end, and you don't think about that until you start getting the payment voucher booklet in the mail and you realize you have to make these payments. And it's just unfortunate that students aren't informed and given better options in the beginning, and also later in the servicing of the loans when they have them, and given all the options that are available to them, such as income-based repayment plans, and also a public service option if they've worked for certain agencies, that if they do that for a certain number of years, their loans will be forgiven. A lot of students aren't told that, so it will make a huge difference if you've worked for an agency and you could have your loans forgiven instead of paying them back for 20, 30, or 40 years.
What is your advice to either someone who finds himself in this position or someone who is looking to originate a student loan at this point? What are the kind of red flags that folks need to look out for? Is there a way that they could avoid falling victim to something like this in the future?
Well, I would say, just like in any transaction, I would make sure that you're very familiar with the contract that you're signing. Make sure you understand what you're signing and what you're agreeing to, and make sure that you've taken advice from other individuals, if possible, who might have more knowledge about that particular contract or agreement. And shop around as well. I mean, the options are out there. Figure out which services are good. I mean, we have so much information at our fingertips now with the internet. So just research as much as possible, and I think that's the best option and the best advice I could give somebody.
I would add that anybody who feels like they've been taken advantage of by Navient that's taken out a student loan, we would encourage them to call our consumer protection number, which is 1-800-281-4418, or go to the website of the Mississippi Center for Justice. It's mscenterforjustice.org.
Was Mississippi a particularly attractive? We heard about some of the stats for defaults and the average amount of student debt. Did it make Mississippians especially more attractive to a company that didn't have the best interest of the students at heart?
I think I saw this stat, and there again I had it highlighted and I left it in my vehicle, so I got a new clean sheet. But I think we were 9th or 4th.
Fourth.
Right.
4th. I missed that earlier. We were 4th in the nation in the number of student loan defaults. So they were lending money in Mississippi, knowing very well that the odds were that these students would not be able to pay the money back.
Where does that stat come from? You know?
I have it in the paper. I don't have it
Okay.
highlighted there, but I do have the quote if I can give it to you later.
I'm just curious where it came from.
Margaret Ann, you know where that?
It's in my notes.
It's in my notes,
I mean, what entity made that determination and that
That's what I'm saying. It's in my notes. I can get it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
the
I just
source.
don't have it with me. Right.
And there's
And I wanna-
there's a lot more information if y'all want to.
I want to clarify one point on the state. We filed on behalf of the state of Mississippi. This was not multi-state with those other states. Okay, I just want to make sure you understood, right?